So yes, the building behind you is the entrance to the deep shelter, deep aerator. So before the Second World War, Mitchell, famous name if you know your railways, Mitchell was asked, who was the head of what was then Transport for London, to study if the tube network could be used as air raid shelters, because they'd seen the bombing in Spain, Guernica, and they knew, if we did have war with Germany, they would bomb our cities. And Mitchell famously turned around a report in about a fortnight that demonstrated how the tube network could be used as shelters. And again, famously, the British government did nothing to implement these recommendations. And then the Blitz starts, and they start work on some deep shelters here for the network. And basically what you have, if you can imagine, you have the Northern Line, and then beneath the Northern Line, running parallel, is another tunnel underneath the Northern. So that they started work in 1940, but because there was a shortage of manpower, people were fighting the war, there was a shortage of labour, and also TfL were told to pay for the tube itself, pay for it. There wasn't going to be the government there to pay for it. And it wasn't until 1942 that the actual tunnels were finished, by which point most of the Blitz had finished by that stage. They were used as for troops as well in 1943. And as you can see, they were enormous. And you could get up to 8,000 people could be in just one of these. And there's a whole series of them. So there's one here, there's one at Clapham Common, there's one Stockwell, Clapham North, and there's a couple in North London as well. And the idea was, they're just short sections underneath the platform, and the idea was that after the Second World War they could be connected, and there could be an express service from Merton underneath, the non-stopping connect. I mean, they never had the money to pay for it. And that was the idea of why they were built, like in sections along here, is so yeah, after the Second World War they could connect them all and have connected service. Right. Then 1944 we get the rockets start landing, the V1s and then the V2s, and then they are actually used as shelters for civilians. Issued in tickets, you had a bunk to go on, you didn't turn up, the bunk went empty, it was very regulated, and then you had canteens and lavatories and medical posts underneath there, and the different areas were named after different admirals. Then, fast forward to the Second World War ends, 1948, and the British government, the Attlee government then, is introducing something called the British Citizenship Act, which extends the right to become a British citizen to anybody in the British dominions throughout the empire. Responding to that, the Windrush generation. So, ship leaves from Jamaica, and there was just under 500 predominantly young men, often ex-servicemen, coming from the Caribbean to work in this country, calling the call to the mother country. What's interesting, going back to Zachary Macaulay, his son Babington Macaulay was the guy who introduced throughout the empire in the Victorian period the whole concept of, basically, if you went to a school in India or the Caribbean, you were taught British history. So you were taught about Nelson, you were talked about Francis Drake and the others, and those young men were calling the call to the mother country due to the kind of the education they were had under the Macaulay system. In fact, there was a phrase, sons of Macaulay, who were more anglicised Indian. They knew more about British history than Indian history. Yeah, and they come to this country. Obviously, London was bombed out. There was a shortage of housing, and the young men from the Windrush generation were initially put into the underneath here, and they were down in Clapham South tube. They didn't stay there very long. They stayed there for about 2 weeks, a month, before they were then rehoused somewhere else. And then one of the interesting stories is that because they were all finding work, and the nearest labour exchange was Cold Harbour Lane in Brixton, and that is the genesis of why Brixton gets its history. That is the end of the tour. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.